Hi, and welcome to the Law Center videocast. I'm Larry DeMarco, your host and founder of the Law Center, the creator of the Family Court Custody Boot Camp. We're revolutionizing family court for self-represented litigants. Learn more in the description portion of this video. Thanks for joining us today. Please subscribe to the channel, like, share, and comment, which will enable more people to learn from the Law Center free videos. Today, we are here with Claudia Ovalles. She's a veterans and child advocate, the National Parents Organization Veterans Advocate for the state of Texas, Florida, and the Interim Chair for the state of California. She's also founder of Heroes for Children's Rights, a group that lobbies for the enforcement of child custody orders. Claudia, thank you for being a guest on the Law Center videocast.
Thank you, Larry. Thanks for having me here today.
You passed a law in Texas, or were very instrumental in getting that law passed, and you teach others how to do the same in other states. How did you get into advocacy?
I got into advocacy like most parents who are going through the litigation process, and they kind of hit a brick wall when it comes to, trying to enforce their visitation and their doing that is such a difficult process because oftentimes it's just a slap on the hand, and the other person does it again, the other parent does it again. So what we discovered here in Texas, myself and some other,
expensive too, Claudia, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely, and it's a very delayed process because by the time you get to do it, a lot of that time opportunity has already passed. So
while you're having trouble seeing your kids and still struggling and with no relief.
Yes. Right. So what I learned a few years ago was about this custodial interference law in Texas Penal Code 25.03. That's the number for our penal code, but every state has one, and theirs is a little different. But ours is called interference with child custody. And what I discovered was that many times when I call law enforcement, because I do have a court order, I was told it was a civil issue, and it was just frustrating that they couldn't help me, and I just didn't understand that. So myself and others were invited to, just local legislative town hall meetings, and I went not knowing anything about who my legislators were, what they discuss, and so I went to my very first town hall at a local community college, and our sheriff was there. And I brought this issue in front of a lot of constituents that were there, and they were there to discuss their own little concerns that were happening around the city. It could be about, bus routes, or it could be about potholes in the road and things like that. And so I brought up this concern, and they actually took an interest because they said that, what, that's a really common thing that you're trying to see your child, and everyone knows someone that's been divorced. So what we did is we discussed it around, had a little round table, and they said, when it's time to pick someone to discuss their issue, we think you should be the one that stands up and addresses it. So I was ready, but then they pulled me aside and they said, hey, we have the sheriff over here, the county sheriff, and we want you to tell him about your concern. So I went and I told him, and I sat across from him, and I said, I don't understand this law. For instance, today I was supposed to see my child, and I called law enforcement, and they didn't help me. And then he asked me, he goes, well, what type of report did you ask for? And me being just a parent, how do we know that we have these options, that there's different types of reports? So he said, you don't need an incident report. You need an offense report, because an offense is reporting of the crime. And so he said that I would go back and I would request the right report, because you already have documentation that you did initiate it, but now you need to get the correct report. So from that moment on, I just learned little steps that I kind of put in my tool belt, and I would teach that to parents. I would share that with parents. And every time I learned something new, I would just add that on, because there were so many of us that were going through it. And so when I had one report, and it led to another, and I got closer and closer. And, I just kind of saved all this information, and I just learned from it.
So Claudia, you are also a co-founder of the Coalition the Enforcement of Child Custody Coalition, and you are the co-founder with my previous guest, Ray L. LaPenta. You're a co-founder, and that's the organization through which you give this information. Just want to clarify that people don't think you're different, that that's your partner, Ray L., correct?
Right, that's correct, yes.
All right, and so the information that we discussed in her video, and also I'll be publishing another one, that's actually the steps that you followed. Would be following in your footsteps if because you got that information from law enforcement that told you how to best work within the
Right.
criminal justice system?
Correct, yes.
Okay, fantastic. So tell us about, you have another organization, Heroes for Children's Rights. Share about that.
Yes, so Heroes for Children's Rights was an organization I established in 2021, early 2022, because, being a Marine veteran, my spouse is a retired Air Force veteran. Something that I observed when he was going through the custody litigation was the way that service members, he was active duty at the time, and how they were treated. And it was just appalling the way that they were questioned, and how their service was used against them, and just twisted to actually show them in a poor light, even though they were actively serving their country. And so, for instance, my husband was thanked for his service, but then they found him to be an absent father because he deployed very often. And I just thought it was appalling. And so once our litigation kind of calmed down a bit, I started talking to other veterans, and they all had similar stories. And I just didn't understand how their service could be just used against them to smear them, and it was okay. And many times things like PTSD could be used against them to find them unfit. Sometimes their PTSD, could actually be impacted by some of these family court decisions. And then we have, veteran suicide and veteran homelessness issues. So that's where I started the organization, to put a little bit more attention on what was going on, but also to help advocate for legislation. But there are some good bills, but there's also some bad bills out there that actually can impact families and the military. And so I started doing that, and utilizing my veteran status, and getting other veterans on board, attending meetings, inviting them in. My husband would attend with me as well. And it was just very empowering to do that.
Claudia, thanks for the help that you give to our veterans. And going back to enforcement for child custody, you went through all the steps that you took. Were those the same steps that you provided in that script for the video, the practical how-to video that I produced on behalf of the Interference with Child Custody Coalition?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yes.
Good. So for anyone who wants to see the full presentation, please, when we're done, go to the description portion of the video, click the link of the video, and you can watch that. But so for people who don't want to jump off, Claudia, can you just give the gist, basically the whole, a summary of the idea of what you want people to do when they're enforcing those rights?
Well, know your penal code. Be in a really good mental state when you're doing this, because you want to be in the right emotional state when you're doing this. And when you talk to law enforcement, you got to be, calm but assertive. You have to be able to tell your facts and request a report. But you got to do it, in a really good tone, and follow through. You really got to see it through.
Can you provide examples of how this would help others, including the Dina and her story with her child abduction? Her spouse abducted her child and moved to Texas. Tell us a little bit about that.
Right. So with Dina's case, her child was actually abducted to Mexico. It was an international child abduction. And Dina and I worked on both of our laws in Texas. She got a law passed, and so did I. But we met, for the first time at the Capitol, and our stories align because it starts with the local reporting process, which again are covered in those steps. It's know your law, know your rights, and how to speak to law enforcement and request their assistance. And then in Dina's situation, when you get a charge for custodial interference, you have to see it through because it is a very lengthy process. But in Dina's situation, her child was internationally kidnapped, and when her charge for custodial interference was applied, there was no kidnapping charge that was attached to it. So the statute of limitation ran out.
So have others applied this to success? People in your group who follow this advice, what stories do people tell you when they apply this?
Oftentimes I'll hear from parents that they were successful, that they educated law enforcement, that they didn't give up at all, that it was just about, maybe going up above, like the officer and supervisor or a lieutenant, and having a conversation and showing them, the penal code, the language, and asking them, can you confirm this for me? Because this is what it says. However, I'm often told it's a civil matter and it's in the criminal penal code. So can you clarify? And that's all it takes. Identify who your state representatives are. They're there for you. And if you need them to clarify the language, that's what they're there for. You can request a meeting, you can do that. And that's how we got started.
And you find lawmakers, state reps or senators will actually intercede for you to help that situation.
Absolutely. Yeah. And many parents, they don't realize that because they're so involved in their case. But if you do want to make, a change, the opportunity is there. It's just taking that first step. I've worked with so many parents that have come on board and had no idea about this. I didn't know anything about this, 2.5 years ago. I really didn't. And so when I attended that first town hall, it was going from there to the next, and then to the next, and then having conversations with legislators in a panel of parents. And it ended up going from that to now I can have a one-on-one with legislators and fully go through my spiel or my bullet points of my request for meetings and what I'd like, what I'd like help with. So
I can tell you who else didn't know about this law: the officers who were supposed to help enforce my personal custody order. What law are you proposing to make enforcement easier on the officials and the players?
So here in Texas, House Bill 969 was passed, and what it would do, it would allow a municipality to enact a civil penalty. So while the state of Texas still has a felony of the interference with child custody, now what they're allowing for law enforcement or a municipality to do is issue a ticketing or a fine for interference with child custody. So it's anywhere between $0 and $500. Again, it allows them to, it doesn't require them to, in hopes that it will reduce these occurrences from happening, ensure that children are seeing both parents. It would actually relieve law enforcement of the time spent at these calls, because it's oftentimes over an hour at these calls. So you minimize that and actually relieve them to go to other emergency situations and things like that. And then you generate money for the city because now they have a new ticketing system. So
let me understand what you're suggesting. Part of the reluctance part of the reluctance was to get involved because they had to charge a crime that was listed as a felony. So what could have been just bickering between two spouses, law enforcement was tasked to making this all or nothing dramatic charge, when it's easier for them to say, okay, here's a $500 fine, which was what judges just do in Pennsylvania anyway, after a 9-month battle. So this is empowering the state municipal officials from being able to handle this with just writing a ticket because there's a prima facie or on its face violation, almost like a speeding ticket.
Correct. Yes, absolutely. So it just gives law enforcement a tool, because oftentimes it's a he said, she said thing. They don't know how to read or understand these court orders. And it was something that was thought out by the legislators. They had already had a lot of meetings with the DA and mayor's office and city council, and that's how this law came to to be, and everything was kind of thought out. So now what I'm currently doing is pushing so that my local municipality can be the first city in Texas to get it enacted, because the law does take effect. Both laws take effect September 1st.
What advice do you have for a parent who hits a brick wall like you did?
Well, I mean, to me, honestly, this has become very meaningful, not just to get a law passed, but to find some form of advocacy that you could reshift your focus onto. Because like many alienated parents that aren't seeing their children, it's very helpful to find something that they could focus on. And this was my focus. The advocacy effort, helping parents, teaching parents, motivating parents, was something that I believe I was gifted to do that based on my situation and my husband's situation. So he's my support, but then this was me willing and being able to help other parents and teach them along the way this step in this process. And it's very meaningful to hear their success stories, because a lot of us, the time's not on our side. And so the sooner you can learn something like this, it mitigates a lot. It mitigates a lot of that alienation, and it mitigates a lot of the time spent in family court and the resources that you have to pay to, to go through those, through that litigation. And so this is just another option that many times parents aren't even considering. Even law enforcement, some of them go through this situation as well, and they don't even know that this was a law. We've heard from quite a few.
So you help parents enforce custodial rights, you're pro-veterans rights, but my understanding is you also, if someone has an injustice, you actually give legislative advocacy generally for someone who wants to change a law or get involved with lobbying. Can you take us a little bit through what the process is there?
It's identifying who your representatives are. You could Google who represents me, and you'll get to enter your address, and you'll identify who's your city council, who your county commissioners, your house reps, your state reps, your federal reps, and depending on what you want to do, it starts off with reaching out to them as a constituent and requesting a meeting, and then from there you kind of get used to it, and you get very familiar with the language and talking to them. And many times they'll tell you that they didn't know that this was a problem, but if you don't reach out to them, they'll never know. They'll never know how to address these issues, or that they need to be addressed. And so it's just getting comfortable doing that. And that's what we do. We walk parents through this, and we actually welcome parents that are willing to do it in their state, and we'll help guide them. But it's helpful that they're the lead, because we're not a resident of that state, but we're willing to kind of walk them through the process. And we've had a few parents that didn't ever think they'd do this, and now they're so comfortable doing it that it's just so helpful for us to have, other parents that are wanting to change it. And they may not change it for their personal situation, but it's very meaningful just to at least change it for future families, especially making things better for these children that are going through this.
It's therapeutic to
yes,
make it
absolutely.
work, to make
Very.
it mean something. Claudia, one thing that you do is you coach a parent and say you can get a proclamation locally. Tell us what that is and the process involved and why you do it with people.
So a proclamation is a recognition of a certain day or a certain cause. Some causes have designated days. And so what we did as part of our movement and for Heroes for Children's Rights is that we established the first ever Interference with Child Custody Awareness Day, April 8th. And one of the things that I did is I presented my local mayor's office with a proclamation request, and I provided certain language that we could share. But I asked for recognition of Interference with Child Custody Awareness Day, April 8th, as a part of Child Abuse Awareness Month. And so this past April, I was actually granted the proclamation, and it was read in City Council, and I was mailed the hard copy of this. And I do have a collection of others, but this one was very meaningful because this was something that coincided with me getting the law passed. And so Again, when we talk about interference with child custody, we're talking about ensuring that children are seeing their both parents as they should. And so this was very meaningful, and parents can do this. And what it takes is just reaching out to your town or city mayor's office, and they normally have like a ceremonial point of contact or ceremonial link on their website, and you just reach out and say, how do I do a proclamation? And again, we can provide the language, or you can search the language on the internet. You can find something similar. But a lot of proclamations are done in recognizing specific days or certain events that you want to recognize, and you start just working from there. And you can do local ones around your area. You can even try a state one, a federal one, but there's something that you can hold and you can save, and they're very meaningful to parents, especially ones that are experiencing similar issues, and they want to do something to bring awareness to their local community. So,
and you're in San Antonio, Texas, right?
Yes, I am.
All right.
Yeah.
My understanding is that you're not a 501c and not official a nonprofit, so you're not set up for donations. So you're doing this as a volunteer. Is that right?
Yes, I am.
Well, thank you for your service for people who want to have social change or want to fight for a cause for children, and for veterans. Thanks for all the work that you do. And also, we're going to leave it here, but thank you for being a guest on the Law Center video cast.
Thank you, Larry. Thanks for having me.
Now that I thanked you already, I did forget one thing. Claudia, anyone who wants to get in touch with you can go to the description portion of this video. But for people who are listening on the phone and maybe have turned off the vision because they're exercising or because they're doing the dishes or laundry, please tell us how we can find you and learn more and perhaps even get in touch.
Okay, so I do have a website, and it's called Heroes for Children's Rights. There is also a Facebook page. You can reach out to the website, or you can email heroesforchildren'srights@gmail.com.
Claudia, thank you for being a guest on the Law Center videocast.
Thank you, Larry. Thanks for having me here today.
We've been here with Claudia Ovalles, and I am your host, Larry DeMarco. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, share, like the video, and comment to give us your thoughts on the issue. Also, click the notification bell next to the subscribe to be alerted of new videos, and check the description portion of this video where you can learn more about Claudia, the Revolutionary Family Court Boot Camp, which will forever transform child custody court, one self-represented litigant at a time. Also, go sign up for our free ebook, which has free resources for self-represented litigants and discounts on items in the Law Center store. Signing off. Tune in next time. Bye for now.